Hello, everyone. Hey, Rodrigo.
Hey Wojtek, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well.
Cool. All right. Good evening to European colleagues. Good morning, to the West Coast in US, and I think good afternoon to the East Coast. So hello to everyone wherever you are, guys. Traditionally, I would like to start by asking you if you can hear us and see us well. If you can just type maybe where are you from, city, country, so we can actually see how big outreach we have today. And today we have like a ninth episode, so I'm super, super happy. And we have a super, super special guest, um, Rodrigo Ibieta, who is Director of Hardware Product Management in Universal Audio. So I will let him introduce himself in a second. And, I don't want to sort of spoil or, sort of take the floor. But today's the topic, the title of today's episode is a product career in the music and audio industry, right? So we'll talk about today mostly about, obviously Rodrigo has amazing experience. You will actually learn in a second. I mean, vast experience, but I mean, we'll actually see. We want to actually give certain inspiration, to people who are, maybe not such a veteran yet like Rodrigo, but maybe they would like to take this path, or they're already on this path and struggle, so there's maybe some kind of inspiration for you guys. Yep. So with this said, Rodrigo, maybe you can just say, a couple of words about yourself before we actually sort of jump into the topic.
Yeah, sure. And first of all, I want to thank you for having me here, and I'm grateful for this opportunity. Um, you know, uh, this is a career path that I was not aware of when I was much younger, and so I really appreciate what you're doing to just sort of help spread awareness and help people learn and sort of find their way into this industry, into product management in general. So I just want to say I appreciate that very much. Yeah, my name is Rodrigo. I'm the director of hardware product management over at Universal Audio. I've been a musician my whole life. I grew up in a musical household. My dad was a musician and also worked in tech for his entire career. Um, I studied music in college, and out of school, I got a job at my local music shop, my local Guitar Center store. And from there, I sort of found my way eventually into product. And so over the last 15 years, I've worked for Guitar Center, I've worked for Fender, I worked for Apple and Beats for a number of years. And then recently, just over a year ago, I joined Universal Audio to manage their hardware product management team, which has been a tremendous honor and something I really enjoy. And so yeah, that's just sort of a high level kind of where I've been. And I'm
Yes.
happy to sort of go more in detail as you'd like.
Cool. I'm just reading right now as we speak. Boston, Colima, Mexico, India. So yeah, all parts of the world. We'll see actually if some European colleagues are here. Guys. So please, type a comment yet if you are there. So that would be nice to see. Um, all right. Okay. So how can maybe if I can just like a small organizational comment. So as usual, we leave comments, like a questions and answers for the end, in last quarter or so. It doesn't mean that post questions, if something, like a right, something interesting that Rodrigo says, or you like to sort of follow on what he says, just post the questions. We'll just read them in the minute. I'll just moderate them. As usual, we don't have to have a hard stop at at the top of the hour. So depending on how many questions you have, we can obviously go a little bit beyond what we have. Yeah, that's probably the most important. Oh, I can see it. Let me see if some. Oh yes, thank you so much. Zurich in Switzerland. Okay, Inverness. Okay, okay. Oh, I don't know how to read properly the name of the city. Leipzig, Germany. I'm sorry for that. I like. Okay, now I can see. That's a. I can see that was probably a typo. Okay, so good to see that we have actually all continents. Almost. Yes, all continents. Like South America yet not
Very
even
cool.
sort of like a check-in. Okay. So like maybe we can start, Rodrigo, by just like the super sort of chronological question, so how come, I mean, you already mentioned that you are from the musical family and like music and tech, so it's so cool to have such a like a upbringing. But I mean, so was it like because of the sort of like upbringing or family? How did you end up in the music industry, like music tech specifically, and audio?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I started playing piano as a kid. My dad is a piano player. He's a big synthesizer player and has played in bands and played music his whole life. So my sister and I were put into piano lessons at a very young age. Um, and back when way back when I was 6 or 7 years old, I didn't love it. Being sort of in a classically I was in a Yamaha piano school program, so it was all classically sort of oriented. Um, when I got a little bit older, I discovered the drums and started playing drums, around middle school, so maybe 10 or 11 years old. And my parents were kind enough to buy me a drum set and let me bang around in the living room. And then eventually, pretty quickly I started playing in bands with my friends, and I've been playing, rock and punk music, pretty much from there on. And I always enjoyed that very much. Um, I continued to study music throughout high school, and I was in marching band and your orchestra, and every musical program that I could get involved in while I was in high school. I did so, and then when I graduated, I was sort of debating where to go next. And I considered being a recording engineer. Some of you might know that there's a very well regarded school for audio engineering and recording in Phoenix, Arizona, which is where I grew up. That's the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences. And so I debated going to school there. I had collected a lot of gear by that point, and I was starting to record friends' bands and sort of play engineer for different projects that myself and my friends had going on. Um, and I also debated going into school for jazz performance. And I actually, I when I got into Arizona State University, I sort of had intended to be a performing musician. Um, and I pretty quickly realized that I didn't want to do either of those two things professionally. I really do enjoy recording and writing songs, but for me, it's often a solitary activity and something that I enjoy for myself. And when it comes to music, I love playing music, but sort of diving deep into theory and sort of the the academia of music was not something that ever really appealed to me, to be totally honest.
Mhm.
I like to play rock music, and I don't like to think too hard about it. And so
Rodrigo, by the way, you might, I mean, have a little like a connection issues, because I mean, I can hear you very, very well, but I mean, sometimes you're just like you're just slow, gently breaking up. I'm not sure you can see that.
on the audio or on the video.
Both. I mean, more video, but
Let's
uh,
uh we'll take the resolution down here. There, maybe that'll help. Okay. Hopefully that helps. Can you hear me? Can you still hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. Only the now video sort of freezes from time to time. So yeah. So
Okay. That's not good.
uh, yeah. Okay. I think it's better now. Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay.
you mentioned that you don't like, yeah, to overthink. Mhm.
Yeah, so all this is to say, like, as somebody who had been playing music for a long time, I had sort of built this passion and something of a skill set, and I wasn't really sure where to go with it. um, so when I graduated college, actually just before I graduated, I started working at my local music retail store, and which was Guitar Center. And I very quickly fell in love with it. Being exposed to lots of different types of people, lots of different types of customers and people with different needs, everyone from DJs to, professional live sound engineers to volunteers working, at their church on Sundays, people who were starting podcasts or home recording. It just gave me this really awesome exposure to all different types of people, different types of customers, and different types of needs, different skill levels, different competencies, which I just found to be super stimulating. Um, and I did that for a number of years, and was able to really kind of hone my knowledge around everything relating to pro audio and instruments and microphones and recording equipment, software. etc. It was just a huge learning opportunity for me. Um, and so I realized, like, okay, this is something that I find just very cognitively stimulating. Like, I wonder where I can go with this from here. So around 2014, I started working for Fender. I had accepted a job as a product specialist out in Southern California. So I moved from my hometown out to Los Angeles to be a product specialist, a brand ambassador for Fender for a couple of years. And so in that capacity, I was, traveling a lot and, visiting Guitar Center stores and Sam Ash stores and other local retailers and doing product trainings and, interacting with customers and doing events and, merchandising and all that kind of stuff. And it was really cool, obviously, to work for one of the biggest and best brands in the industry, but also to sort of be continue to sort of have that relationship, at retail with real end users and customers, and I enjoyed that a lot. And so that for me, sort of starting in sales and sort of continuing down that path for me was just a very natural on ramp into product management. I had sort of developed this just natural competency around products, pitching products, training people, helping to facilitate sales and, merchandising, all the kind of stuff I just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So, around 10 years ago, Fender opened up a product development office in Hollywood, which at the time was local to me. And I saw an opportunity to just get in sort of at an entry level in product management. And at the time, I didn't know anything about product management. The whole, like the whole existence of that sort of discipline was new to me. But as a kid, as a teenager, I had always been very interested in technology and building computers and taking
Mm-hmm.
things apart and just understanding how technology and products work. And so again, there was just sort of like a natural fit there with stuff that I had always enjoyed doing. And so I've been in product management since. I spent a number of years managing the acoustic guitar product line over at Fender. I did a little bit of time managing their accessories and guitar effects line as well. And then I accepted a job working for Beats by Dre, which is owned by, yeah,
Rodrigo, can I
yeah,
just like interject and
sure,
actually
yeah,
drop one comment here because we'll just deep dive into this in a second. Once again, I wanted to ask if everybody can see and hear very well because I have some drops, but once again, it may be the platform thing. I can see that Matt says there is no issue on his end. I want to be 100% sure, the guys, that you can see and hear correctly. So that's one thing. Please, if you can just, guys, put a comment, yes, we can hear you and see you, or no, sucks, please do, right? So we're not like, I'm not like a freaked out. No issue. Okay, that's okay, cool. Okay, perfect.
good.
Okay. I wanted to, it's just like a reflection because I once when I was traveling, I was listening to a podcast which has nothing to do with music and audio. Yeah, and Simon, hey Simon, good that you're here with us. So I can see Canada. We have Canada. I can reveal here. Okay, I don't. It was like a podcast about a guy who was a former professional musician, a classic musician, who actually, started a business, and he was actually telling the story that at some point in the career, he was just traveling a lot, doing concerts traveling with the orchestra. I think he was like a viola or whatever. I mean, I don't remember what instruments he was playing, but of course, like a lot of practice and still a lot of traveling, right? And just to make a living. And he says that at a certain point, it was very hard for him, if you want to be a top-notch musician, you need to sort of be on, practice a lot and, go with the orchestra. Then they by the way, his wife was also like a professional musician. So they had kids, and he says that's starting to be difficult. And I'm saying this because, when you mentioned that, I could, from traveling and, being a product specialist, actually settle down and actually work in the product development. I want to sort of make a comment to those. I know there is a lot of people who are actually deep into the product, generally into building products from different marketing and engineering and running companies. But I mean, to those who are, I don't know, musicians or sound engineers or mixing engineers, it's a great, sort of way that you can still be connected, right? I'm not sure if you agreed with that, right? You don't have to sort of be, you don't want to sort of travel I mean, I know some people love actually traveling, right? But I mean, at a certain point, you want to also have a family or stuff, and you cannot be completely all the time on the road, right?
Yeah, I mean that's totally right. If you're in sales, if you have a product specialist type of role, travel is going to be a big part of that. And likewise, if if you aspire to be a professional musician, I think as probably most people know, the only money to be made largely as a musician is in touring and in performing live. And that can be rough, and it depends on your individual situation, your family situation, sort of what stage of life you're in. I think when I was younger, when I was in that role, I did enjoy the travel, and I had relocated from the city I grew up into this, the massive metropolis that is LA, and having that role gave me an opportunity to sort of learn about the city and just to meet a lot of people in all of these sort of distinct submarkets within Los Angeles, and there are many. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I mean that can totally be stimulating, and for the right type of person, you can do that work for decades and be very very happy in it. But for me personally, my aspiration was always to sort of start a family and sort of settle down and be able to have some kind of home base, and so that was something important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, on the other hand, I just realized that, I mean, being a product leader, it's also, it's not, like a sitting at home and in the office, right? I mean, also a lot of traveling is, I think, included in the role, right? I mean, fairs, NAM
Sure.
show, Super Booth, whatever, right? I mean,
Yeah,
different.
yeah, absolutely. And things have certainly changed since the pandemic. I did used to travel quite a bit while I was working in product management at Vendor, and we would do both of the NAM shows every single year, and I'd be in the booth exhibiting and talking to press and customers and so forth, but also traveling to different regional corporate hubs and doing big sales meetings with the European team or the team in Japan and APAC, and just sort of being the voice of the product, the voice of the customer, for all the different functions across the company. Naturally requires travel, and also just working with contract manufacturers overseas. I was fortunate enough to be able to take some trips to China and see various parts of China as well as Indonesia. Obviously a lot of the manufacturing that's done, and within MI happens there. And so, you want to be there and you want to sort of understand, the capabilities of your partners and how these things are actually made.
Yep, absolutely agreed. So you're saying that actually it's like a bit by accident that you found this role, right? They opened the office in LA and you sort of like happened to, join the product development. I mean, right? From the sales specialist, it's just like a.
Yeah, I was not aware, as a young person, in college, the whole notion of product management as a field was completely not on my radar. um, and I think what's really cool now, obviously in the age of social media and everything else, there's just so much content out there to help. There are just incredibly smart people out there on LinkedIn, on other platforms that are willing to share what they've learned and sort of the best practices in the field, and
And
help.
organizations like associations, etc., right? There are a lot of like professional organizations as
Yeah,
well connecting people.
absolutely. Yeah. So there's a wealth of information out there that, at least to me was not as well established, or just not on my radar, as again, like, you know, um, graduating high school, coming into sort of the professional world as a musician, there were only a handful of careers that, like, I had really considered. One of which was being some kind of sound engineer, recording live sound or otherwise, or actually pursuing music as a career. And so I just had this sort of like very limited sort of perspective on like what I could actually do with my skills. And again, like, sort of being able to get in, in a sales capacity and sort of just understand the broader landscape of what's happening in this industry was really foundational for me. And I'll tell you too, I know, a bunch of people that I've sort of met along the journey of working, sort of within retail and sort of in that environment, who have also gone on to work for great companies like Taylor Guitars, Roland, in music, some of these other major brands in the space. And so I think, for I guess what I would say is, like, don't overlook, sort of getting a start in this industry at the retail level, because those things can really open up a lot of doors for you, and you meet a lot of people, and you meet reps from some of these big companies. And if you're really serious about pursuing a career, a lot of people have started just selling gear at their local music store. I mean, people I work with at Universal Audio. um,
Mhm.
so I think that's a really important sort of on ramp for folks.
So before we then go to the next company, I mean, I wanted to ask people who are listening and watching, guys, are you already in the product related domain? I don't know, product management, product marketing, I don't know, like a QA, all these kind of like roles that are around building or marketing products. So that would be actually super interesting to know. If you can just type, you don't have, just say what exactly this role is if you don't want to, but I'm just super curious, if some of you already I know some of the names I can see in the comments, so I know that some definitely do, but I mean, I would like to learn if you do products, build products, if you could be so kind and let us know. All right, so sorry, Rodrigo, because I interrupted you with this, remark when you mentioned about, sort of when you from Fender, then you moved to the next role, I think.
Yeah. So, I've always been very passionate about audio, in terms of, both from a consumer perspective, but also, sort of a recording
I
and,
understand.
pro audio perspective. So, I very much enjoyed my time at Fender, and it forced me to become a better guitar player, and it sort of forced me to learn about this other. I'm a drummer. I should say that you can't see my drum kits out of the frame here, but yes, I have all these lovely guitars behind me, but I'm a drummer. And I always was, very passionate about audio, and just sort of the science, and and sort
Mm,
of the manipulation of audio, again, both from a consumer and a pro perspective. So when this opportunity to go work for Beats by Dre opened up, I jumped on it, and I wanted to sort of see how I could take the skill set that I had learned, that I had sort of, learned working at Fender, and adapt that to a much larger company with, a focus on sort of mass market consumer electronics. And so that was a huge, just amount of learning, and sort of adaptation.
mhm,
Moving from, you know obviously Fender's one of the biggest companies in MI, but compared to a company like Beats or Apple, it's a much smaller company.
mhm.
um, and so, you know there's a lot of adaptation that I had to do to sort of understand, how I fit into this much larger organization that had, a lot more resources, but also a lot more sort of silos for specific functions. um
Yeah, I
so yeah.
understand that. I
Yeah.
understand that. By the way, let me just show comments. Yes, products experience here, project management experience. Oh, and actually wanting to go into audio. That's perfect. That's great to hear, guys. By the way, if I can just a small, once again interject super small comment, you know, it all started with super small webinars, but we received so much positive and encouraging feedback that it turns out to become like a serious podcast, and you can follow this podcast on YouTube, or it's not yet on Apple and Spotify and other platforms, gradually sort of like a rolling out, for, to a larger audience. And also, some of you who already watch and listen, you can also join our monthly newsletter. Of course, there are announcements of those webinars. We also have articles. So, it's not just by me. A lot of guests actually writing articles, and I hope that more articles will be there. So like from different professionals sharing their experience also in writing. They'll be super happy to if you join. I'll also send the links in the chat in a second. But you can just simply scan them and get the newsletter. It's like a free newsletter. It will be free. It's just like our way to sort of like share this knowledge and share this experience. Yeah, because we simply, it was also hard for me to get in, so it is just sort of one thing. It's way to say thank you and give back to the community, but also like just realize that if I had such a problem, maybe it's also like a problem for others, right? So we'll be super happy for you to join. There is also like a Facebook group and Discord will be added a little bit later for those who don't like Meta. Yeah, but there is actually a community that we are building. By the way, Rodrigo is part of it, so you guys know. We are just actually it's it's the first announcements that I make. But our Audio Product Academy will actually not will have already has a programming board, so we are just gathering a group of industry veterans who will actually help out, to shape educational programs and materials, give, guidance, and actually, I'm just like I have some obviously experience in products, but I mean, cannot compare, to some of the guests, including Rodrigo, I mean, so that's why I said we have to get some, super pros, to help out and to shape those programs. And I think I can already say with the, I mean, with some excitement, great excitement, that Rodrigo will be, actually is already joining the programming board, and so, yeah, you will actually see him and, know that all this material that we're preparing, it's, consulted with this expert here. Thank you very much, Rodrigo, for that, and I'm really, super grateful for your support.
Yeah, likewise, and I'm happy to contribute however I can.
Yeah. So guys, you will actually see more of it, and they will just gathering really a group of pros, to once again, first of all, we want to listen to the community, actually sort of like learn what you guys need, and what are the struggles and problems that you that are sort of like at your job. By the way, I'm just actually also like pasting a small like a survey. It's just like a super short survey which actually has 1 minute to fill, but we share it also in every episode of the podcast. Simply want to know what topics we would like to cover, what to improve. I'm just like trying to listen to this to this feedback. So please, that's, if you can just take time after the episode and feel it will be extremely grateful. Okay. But back to you. Okay, so like silos, larger organization, a bit more silo organization, and I touched a little bit on challenges and issues. So what were like especially in the early stage, what were your sort of like problems and challenges? If you still remember what they were, so like learning the product craft in the audio industry.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think two varied, I would say, distinct sets of challenges between working for a company like Fender or even Universal Audio versus working for a much larger sort of consumer focused company like Beats or Apple. I think working in MI, some of the biggest challenges that you face as a product manager are simply resources and data. Um, One of the key aspects of product management is, really understanding the market, understanding the customer, and being able to do that at as granular and detailed a level as possible. Um, the music industry is not a large industry. I think for those who have been doing this work for a while know that this is a very small world, and sort of once you sort of understand the lay of the land and the sort of cast of characters, you start to intersect with a lot of the same people and a lot of the same companies, time and time again, which is wonderful, by the way. What a small world it is. At the same time, data within MI is particularly hard to come by. It's very difficult to know, sort of what's happening out there from a sales perspective. Sort of understanding the customer, is something that and I think I think I made a comment in your last podcast that there's what I call the double-edged sword of product management within the musical instruments space. And what I mean by that is that people who work in the musical instruments industry tend to be self-selecting. The people that do this work and do it for decades are people that are extremely passionate about it and have a lot of natural subject matter expertise and competency in the field, which is a huge asset, right? The folks that I work with at Universal Audio, I'm so grateful I get to work with some people that are, industry veterans that have, worked on some of the most iconic products over, spanning decades. And so that's a huge asset, is just sort of the amount of knowledge that people have of the market, the customer, how things have evolved over time, and just the passion for learning that comes along with that. The downside of that is that we all have our biases, and I think when you yourself are a customer of the products that you are working on, there's maybe a natural tendency to lead with your own wants, desires, needs for a particular product. And so you really have to balance that. Part of being a product manager in this field, I think, is really always checking your biases and your assumptions, and ensuring that you are taking into account all the different types of creatives and musicians and people out there that are using your products, how they're using them, and just constantly calibrating and recalibrating. So that's kind of the upside and downside of sort of the passion and subject matter expertise that people have, I think, within MI.
Can I nail you here a bit? Because
Sure.
it's just like when you say data, it just already gives me, there is obviously so many things, like a sales data, like a usage data, market data, dynamics, etc. So there are just so many different, right? I mean, components of it. I mean, one thing is obviously just know how people use your products and what they like and dislike with about it. But, do you mean also like some analytics? Do you use some, obviously for hardware it's especially difficult, right? It's just, and I mean, instruments, it's not too many, it's even harder, right? People get sort of used to this thinking about product management. I've even heard this small comment. I wanted actually to be picky, but I sort of let go a comment from somebody who says, oh, like a product management is a subdomain of software industry. And I say, what if? Fuck, it's really like product management is older than internet. It's just 70s, 60s, right? I mean, it originated with the physical products and actually, sort of like from marketing and sales rather than from the software industry. So I'm just like curious, how you deal with that, sort of limitation, right? You are just right now responsible for hardware, how to get data, how to go, like a knowledge about.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, usage data is one thing, right? And that sort of data, depending on the product that you're making, we're fortunate at Universal Audio is that most of the products we make have some kind of software component to them. So in terms of the data that we can see, from Apollo users, for example, we get lots of rich data around how people are using our product, which is always informing, where we want to go next. Not the case for guitars, right? Your acoustic guitar, your electric guitar is not sending data back to the company somehow. You have no way of knowing, how often or how people are using the product. But I think you're touching on an important point, which is sort of the distinction between hardware and software, and how you might think about effectively managing hardware products is quite different than how you would think about managing software products, right? And a lot of what we depend on in terms of hardware is really understanding, the sort of size and shape of the market and how many customers are out there and sort of what the average sales prices are and, what kind of volume is happening within a given segment. And that's really important to get right because, you're planning months in advance and you have lead times that are, 3 to 6 months to source hardware. And then you have to, ship that hardware. You have to warehouse that hardware. You need to be as accurate as possible with the way that you forecast your business, in order to make sure that you're leveraging your cash effectively and that you're getting the most effective returns out of the investment that you're making in hardware. And the price of getting that wrong can be really significant, right? And this is something that's I think is really important for people to keep in mind as a distinction versus software, right? You don't have to warehouse, you don't have to, software is no longer sold in boxes, right? Like you don't have to warehouse your software. And so I think, from from a data perspective, all those inputs are really important when it comes to forecasting and managing your supply chain, managing your suppliers, your raw material inventory, your finished good inventory, et cetera. Um, and again, within the musical instrument space, that sort of market level data is indeed hard to come by. And if you just do a Google search and you say, well, how big is the market for audio interfaces, for example, there are a dozen different companies that are happy to sell you a report, and you might get
And they differ.
you might get a dozen different numbers, right? like like
Arbitrary.
like drastically different numbers.
Yeah.
So you have to be really careful, and depending on the kind of company, you may be running a very well established business that tends to be stable over time. And I would say
Mm-hmm.
that Fender sort of falls into that. I would sort of classify Fender in that category, right? Guitars, they sort of evolve in small increments over time, and the market for guitars, I think, is largely quite stable. Obviously, like, COVID, we had a bunch of people stuck at home that, went out to go buy all kinds of different things, not just musical instruments. But I think there's a very, Fender's been a company obviously for 75 years. There's a very predictable business cadence and sort of, a track record that you can sort of lean on, to help inform how you're running that business. I think if you're a technology company that's, if you're building guitar pedals, for example, or if you're building audio interfaces, or products that are much more likely to sort of change frequently over time,
Mm-hmm.
that business can be much more volatile, and it can just, it can shift very dramatically within just a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for those types of businesses, I think having as rich of external data as you can get, and really lean, another thing that we really have to do, I think, in this industry, is just really leverage the insights of our retail and channel partners, to understand what's working, what's not working. And that's a very relational driven, relationship, kind of driven, interaction that you have.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I used to like this expression that sales is your eyes and ears, right? As a product guy, right? Especially in larger companies where you cannot actually handle all the relations by yourself.
Absolutely.
Actually, good to have actually great relations with your sales reps is actually like of essence. Yeah, I got it. So you mentioned, like, okay, so data. By the way, that will, the product discovery, all these like tools and methods. Yeah, we're just gonna sort of drill down this topic on our YouTube channel. There will be plenty more content on this one. And I hope we'll just come back to this topic again. But you also mentioned resources, right? You also mentioned data and resources. So what do you mean by that? Just like having enough money to staff, whatever?
It's not just money. I mean, it's just people and time, right? A lot of companies in the musical instrument space are very very small companies that run quite lean.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I enjoy about sort of product management within the MI space is that we as product managers are responsible for maintaining a lot of key aspects of the business. And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes I think you know you can get spread thin, right, when you're simultaneously trying to think about product definition, product requirements, product development, working with engineering teams. But you're also thinking about, some of the stuff I just mentioned, working with finance and logistics and supply chain around actually planning for the business. And then also working with all the teams on the go-to-market side, sales, marketing, product marketing, brand marketing, PR, all those different sort of aspects of sort of the outbound,
Yep.
facing side of the business. And so it's just a people and time thing, I think. But again, if you're looking for a role that is highly dynamic and sort of puts you in a position where you need to be interacting with all those different types of people, engineers and supply chain people and more creative people and sort of marketing people, I think product management is a really fun place to be, and really forces you to become an expert communicator and good at bringing different groups of people sometimes with competing priorities together and sort of
Mm-hmm.
aligning teams. Yeah.
Okay, so you're really gradually actually, sort of transition to the actually area that I wanted sort of to cover more, so actually what is your, job like, and actually what do you do, right, as a product director. I can already hear it's actually alignment, right, and communication, and actually setting up priorities, right, and that's what I hear. Of course, I know a little bit, but I just want to sort of sort of know a little bit more what is your sort of say philosophy on how you sort of manage the product strategy, and generally how you sort of see
Yeah.
your role, and what's your typical day look like. Maybe a stupid question, like cliche question, right? Typical man.
I mean, it ebbs and flows with the rhythm of the business. As the simplest way I can put it, I'm very fortunate in the role that I have now, that I have a team of really skilled product managers, on my team, that are really managing sort of the day-to-day aspects of product development, requirements definition, working with suppliers, working with all of our, both inbound and outbound teams to actually, build and develop products, and ship products. So, in my particular role, I'm a bit more focused on strategy and trying to help solve some of these really big um, problems that we have, at an organizational level around, sort of data and understanding the market, understanding the customer, and really ensuring that we are, sort of placing the right bets, from a product roadmap perspective, which is work that I enjoyed doing a lot. And again, like, really focusing on, building cross-functional buy-in across, all these different functions, and sort of, trying to act
Mhm,
as sort of the intermediary between, inbound teams and outbound teams. And
mhm,
by the way, I do a lot of work at the individual contributor level as well, in the role that I have. Again, I think, if you're to look at sort of the universal audio product offering, and how many different products and types of products we have, and sort of our brand presence in the world of MI, you might think that we're a large a larger, or maybe a significantly larger company than we are. We're actually quite a small company.
mhm,
And so I think, a lot of folks, sort of even at the director or VP level, are responsible for doing a lot of individual contributor level work. And that's, again, also, part of what's fun about the job is sort of being able to,
not being completely disconnected
not
from,
yeah, exactly, being able to sort of zoom in and zoom out, and sort of, there's like this sort of cognitive challenge of, what we sometimes call context switching, right? Where, you'll be in one meeting and you're talking about very granular level, feature or technology, details of a given product, and then in the next meeting you're with finance and the CFO, and trying to build a forecast or make a business case for something. And then the meeting after that, you're working with, the VP of marketing on, what is the name of this product, and how are we positioning it, and what are the features, and what's the customer facing narrative, and what's the creative and the campaign look like. And
uh-huh.
so there's a lot of dynamism, I think, in this role that is really fun if
Mhm.
you sort of like that.
And what is your team? So what kind of, who actually reports to you? How big is your team?
I've got two team members right now. It's a small team. I've got one product manager who's focused on our Apollo business. We've got another product manager who's focused on sort of all the other aspects of our hardware business, which includes our Volt line of interfaces, our microphones. We have a line of modeling microphones that we're really proud of. And then we've also got, guitar pedals and some of the analog equipment that we sort of continue to build, to the old recipe, in house in Santa Cruz.
Gotcha. So it's like a
Yeah.
business. I mean, so it's like a business function. I understand, right? You're just like a sort of create a strategy, and you don't manage any part of, let's say, I mean, engineering or design or marketing. I understand. Then in Universal Audio, this product, it's really like a business function. You manage sort of, yeah.
It's certainly a large part of what I do, but it definitely doesn't exclude some of the other things that you mentioned.
Mhm.
I do work very, very closely with our engineers on sort of defining requirements for products, and
Mhm.
working through schedules and prototype builds, and
Mhm.
working with mechanical and electrical engineers and industrial designers around the look and feel of a product and the product experience, and
Mhm.
what the UX is and the control layout and all that good stuff. So I do. I you know
Uh,
I,
Sorry
I
to yeah, sorry. Like I
yeah.
finish. I didn't want to sort of like it drew your attention, but just wanted, because there is actually a question that comes, it's very much related to what you say. So I will just display in a second. So
Yeah, I can see it. It comes across the screen in nice big bold text. So I did see that. Yeah, I think I would say where I feel like I add maybe the most value in my particular role at UA is maybe managing the business and making sure that we are making the right decisions when it comes to forecasting, the financial outlook for any given thing that
mm,
we want to go build, making sure that that's well aligned with all of the technical requirements and what's feasible and the schedule, time to market, and
mhm,
also what we um, what the priorities are from a go to market perspective. And there's sometimes at UA we say, like, we could build anything. I mean, we have some of the most highly skilled engineers and product development people in the entire industry, and so there we sometimes have this this, like, I don't know if maybe you'd call it decision anxiety. Like, there's all kinds of really awesome stuff that we can build. We have fantastic software chops, and algorithm and DSP chops, and we build super high quality hardware. So there's all kinds of things you could do with that, right? There's all kinds of products that you could make, and it's really about placing the right bets that are going to help the company grow, but also things that align well with the brand and things that customers
mhm.
want to see. And sort of, so there's just so many dimensions to the decision making involved there. So yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's a good one. I mean, it reminded me of Catch 22. I'm not sure if you read the book. There was actually, I don't remember the name of this character, Joe. Joe. He was like a photographer, and he was in the army. And he was like, before he joined the army, he was a photographer in some famous, journal. And he was like, he's always wanted to, take pictures of beautiful ladies in Italy, because he was like a in Italy. In U.S. Army, and nobody actually believed that he was actually a photographer, because he was so anxious. He never actually he never could make a decision. Do I want to go to bed with this lady or actually take pictures, right? And actually, people, and the guy is laughing. Hey, actually, that's true. It's not like a joke. The guy is actually, he was like a famous photographer, right, before the war, but he's like he never can make his mind. So he's neither a good lover nor a photographer, right? Because like what shall I do? Yeah, but anyway, so let me just look at display. I know it's just not, I mean, probably we'll just go over there, so many interesting questions to ask here, but I mean, this one is probably very interesting in the context of what you're saying. How have you dealt with prioritizing actionable insights drawn from the varied audience, perhaps users that have different workflows or around genders? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good question. I think in terms of how we deal with user and usage data. We're always sort of looking at some of the common themes and things that pop up in volume, right? We have a number of apps that we are constantly collecting user feedback from. So if you're familiar with our products, one of our apps is called Console, and that's sort of the central mixer controller for our Apollo interfaces. We also have a DAW software, which is Luna. And so we're always collecting feedback from users in real time, right from within the app. And so those things get rolled up, and we look for, again, like, key themes, and what are the most common, most frequently requested things that we're looking at. I think our mission at UA is really to serve sort of the mass market of serious music creators. And so we want to deliver features that are as widely applicable to as many people as possible. within this space, there are always going to be people that have, specific workflows or have, particular, needs for different types of sounds, different types of plugins by genre. I think what we're really looking to do is sort of cast as wide of a net as possible, and just look for those common themes that sort of cut across, across genres and
Mhm.
things that are, another part of our mission at UA is just making the brand more accessible to creators that are maybe a little bit earlier in their journey. Historically, we've had, very pro level users, and, a lot of our, you know, a lot of our business historically has been, project studios, professional studios, and that's still a huge part of our business today. If you walk into, lots of, pro studios, all around the world, they're going to have Apollos or some of our analog gear, and so we still have, quite a heavy presence, with those types of customers. But I think overwhelmingly, we're looking for opportunities to kind of evolve the brand and make ourselves more accessible and easier to use,
Mhm.
and appealing to people who are just getting into recording for the first time. So that's another sort of key aspect of our strategy that sort of informs, where we go with particular features, plugins, workflows, et cetera. We want things that are, and you can see this in some of the products that we've launched recently, right? We launched a vocal plugin late last year called Top Line that really took a whole bunch of different, sort of algos and different DSP, features that we had shipped sort of already, and put them together in a very user friendly kind of UI, with limited controls, and a lot of functionality with a very very simple, user experience and UI. And so you're going to continue to see us do things like that. So
Mhm.
hopefully that answers the question.
There's actually another one related to this topic a bit, which is actually I like very much. B2B and B2C in the music tech. Interesting question.
Any comment? Yeah, it's yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I think, when I sort of think of, B2B within music tech, I think of, sort of the networked audio space, and, protocols like Dante, and some of these more advanced technologies that are helping sort of connect, um, different types of hardware and software in, enterprise environments, within,
Media,
yeah,
media probably.
media, large scale live sound, broadcast and post and things like that. There are, I would say that, like, I guess at a high level, there are, these are two quite distinct markets, and I think, obviously we're very much focused on B2C. We've started to sort of, kind of dip our toe in the world of networked audio and Dante, and that starts to become much more of a B2B type of business. And I think, it just requires different, it's different relationships. It's, you become less dependent on, resellers like, your Sweetwaters and Tomans and Guitar Centers of the world, and much more dependent on, integrators and consultants, and people that are,
Large deals. Yeah.
yeah, large deals. I think then, the requirements from a software perspective become much more tailored to, what the end user is looking for. The technologies are different. So they're just very different businesses. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And I think, I mean, I'm not sure if this will be a good remark, but I mean, generally also outside music industry, there is this thing between B2B and B2C, and I would say that doesn't differ so much from other industries, right? It's, like I say, sales is a bit different, right? Because selling to B2B, it's more like it's not like a product driven. It's not like you don't have, brand driven. It's more like a relation driven, right? As you say, it's consultants and onboarding, etc. It's so I mean, it's mostly sales and brand. They differ so much, and I would say that if I just compare big companies that do like a B2B sector, media, games, movies, etc., to the B2C sector, individual creators, artists, etc., that's not so much different than other domains. Yeah, I'm not sure if you would agree.
Yeah, I think that's
That's
fair. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, Rodrigo. But I mean, when I ask you about the challenges and like sort of your problems, you escaped a little bit by saying generally in product management. To me, it was more interesting about your personal challenges. So when you sort of grew up
Mm.
as a product manager, sort of, what did you find sort of challenging, right? Not just as generally as a product guy, but you personally, right? So what potentially people who, let's say, take the same path, could sort of come across.
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, product management can take very like many different shapes depending on the type of company or the type of industry. And so I think whether you're in music and audio or product management in any other field, I think it's very important to sort of have mentorship from people that have done that type of work before, and to utilize the resources that are out there to sort of help you learn. I think. Yeah, I mean, it really just depends on sort of where your natural, kind of competency comes from. I think, a lot of folks that get into product management do so because they are very attached to the product and to building products, which is awesome. But there's sort of a whole other aspect to the role which we talked about, which is sort of the business side of it,
Mhm.
and being able to sort of manage a P&L effectively, and manage your supply, and your financial outlook and your resource allocation, and all
Mhm.
that good
Mhm.
stuff. So I think that also requires time and mentorship and exposure. And so I think it's really important for product managers to make sure that you're sort of balancing, the amount of hands-on time that you're spending on developing and shipping products, but also sort of managing the business and sort of the outcomes from a financial perspective for the business.
Gotcha. But you haven't answered my question again. So like, like you're saying what generally is okay, or what generally is advice. But I mean, I'm not sure if if you don't want to, don't want to sort of put you on the spot. But I mean, maybe you don't remember it. It's such a long time. But do you remember, like your first? And I'm not saying right now, but generally speaking, so what were, like I don't know, stress, or like a frustration, or like a not being able to align people, or maybe not having enough data, what is sort of like a, sort of real challenges, sort of like a, cold hard through, right? Not just like a.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I'll give you a couple of examples. For me personally, I'm a very introverted person. And so, when I started working at Fender Corporate, that was the first time I had ever worked in an office before. I had been working in retail for, 10 years at that point. Um, so you go from working with 20 people to working with 200, 300 people. And I think just understanding sort of the lay of the land of what different functions did, and who to talk to about what, and when to talk to somebody, or when to not bother somebody,
Mhm.
when to call a meeting versus when to just go to someone's desk and ask them a question. All those things for me, I maybe learned a little bit later in my career than people who are fortunate enough to have like an internship, in college, and be able to work in an office and sort of understand what are all these different functions, finance and ops and marketing and PR and all, like I didn't, I had to sort of, I got thrown into that, and I just had to kind of figure it out, and I was fortunate enough to, manage some interns during my time at Beats that were sort of like in their, junior, sophomore, junior year in, college, 19, 20 years old. And, these kids are coming in and they already understand all of this. They understand office culture, and they understand, different functions and where they fit in. I didn't learn any of that until I was, like in my mid to late 20s. Um, so for me, that was always sort of there was a learning curve there, I guess I'll say. And I think the other thing is just sort of communication related, right? Again, like I'm sort of an introverted person by nature, and going all the way back to my time at Guitar Center. I remember my first week working at Guitar Center. I was terrified, like, that like you would have to go. like sell things to people and like go and approach somebody, who's, sort of, floating around the store and say, hey, hey, can I, how can I help you? What are you looking for today? Like that stuff scared me. Like it really scared me. But it also forced me to get good at it, right, and to become, an effective communicator. And I think if there's any one thing that I would like, if I could give like one piece of advice to people who are starting down this career path, become an expert communicator, and learn to empathize with different types of people. Learn to sort of adapt your communication style to the style of the person that you are talking to. Um, Learn how to sort of anticipate friction, objections, curveball questions from people, and learn how to be a translator, right? You talk to engineers, and you talk to creative people within marketing, or you talk to finance and legal teams. Like all these people have different communication styles and ways of working and things that are
jargon, right? And even
different. Sure, yeah, different jargon, all of these things. And so I think like as a young person, I didn't, maybe give myself full credit or really realize how important communication is. And, like, I know we're over time here, but, when
keep going.
when I tell people I'm a product manager, typically the first question people will ask me is, "Oh, so you're an engineer?" And that could not be further from the truth. I was terrible at math. Like math was probably my weakest subject. I
High
always had
five.
high five. I always had a lot of interest in sort of the technical side of how things are made, how products are made. But I was never a math guy. English was my strong subject, and I was always a reasonably decent writer. Um, and I don't think I would have ever imagined when I was in high school or in my 20s how important that skill set would become, just in terms of communication. So that would sort of be like, hopefully that maybe that's a better answer to the question that you're asking.
Great one. By the way,
Yeah.
I mean, a small comment from also a colleague from Universal Audio. Think of learning to spin introvert with totally terrifying trial by fire. Yes. By the way, I think already make
Hey,
a
Nick.
small. Hey Nick, I can make a small heads up that Nick will be one of the upcoming guests on the show, and he's a product designer. So with this said, I want to say that we are not only doing content for product managers, but this is also like for product designers, from product marketers. So what Rodrigo mentioned, right? That there are those functions, right? And usually, I mean, especially like earlier when we started the career, there was not so much content available, right? So what those specific functions do. So that's why we're just we call it like a product academy, but it's like a product related stuff, right? So it's like a product management, product marketing, product design, finance, right? Because obviously like Rodrigo mentioned, you need to actually be able to put a P&L, right? Profit and loss, so like a basic budget together, right? We understand what break even and return on investment is, stuff like this, right? Even if we are not so good in math, right? Yeah, so that's the idea. We are just running over, but I think by the 15-20 minutes more, I think we can go, especially that there are a few questions. How much hands-on? That's actually the interesting question related to what you said already. How much hands-on engineering experience would you consider sufficient to get into product in the music tech?
I mean, I'll speak for myself. I don't know that you need any. I think if you have some foundational understanding of the product, the customer, the market, I think that gives you a great springboard to sort of learn those things on the job, and that's how I did it. And um, there are just so many different types of products within this industry. If working for a company that makes guitars or other types of instruments versus a company that's very software focused, or a company that makes other types of technology, synthesizers, audio interfaces, etc. all of these things are going to be very different. So I think what's most important is that you're able to develop a foundational understanding of the market and the customer, and then I think everything else, the sort of the learning from a technical perspective, um, it never stops. I mean, and sort of neither does the market and customer aspect of it. But like, I think it's okay to always be to be learning, and to just start from sort of an external, an outside in perspective, and then you can sort of learn the inside out, depending on how that particular company works.
Interesting perspective, I mean, I was actually also about to ask the same question. And I mean, I always sort of like, and I'm still sometimes until today a bit terrified because, I'm also like not an engineer. By the way, when I had my first startup that failed, actually tried to code a little bit, I mean, front end, because we didn't have resources, so sometimes you needed to get your hands dirty and, put a website together, so at least I sort of understood briefly what, software engineering is, so that gave me some kind of confidence to speak to engineers. But I can see that a lot of them are actually super, I mean, both software and hardware are super helpful, right? As long as you are open and willing to learn, right? That you always have great partners, right? Within the engineering team.
That's such a great point. Engineers typically love to talk about their work, right? And they like to explain, sort of, what they're working on, and sort of the, relay the technical aspects and sort of the innovations that are really motivating them, the types of problems that they're solving. So if you can sort of learn, again, to sort of adapt your communication style and understand the jargon, understand the lexicon of what they're using, um, I think in many cases they will welcome you, with open arms, and be willing to sort of help you understand those things better. And I think another key thing is just to identify who those people are within an organization that are sort of the more, people that are sort of willing to share, and willing to sort of mentor you. And it's good to have people, from across different functions that are, willing to take that time, to help you get up to speed and understand what they're working on. So, I think there's this aspect of just natural curiosity that's really important for a product manager to have. So yeah.
Exactly. By the way, to those people who have to run because we're just a bit, like I went over. This is a recorded session, so you can watch it later on YouTube or on LinkedIn or Facebook, wherever. So if you have to run, and find what we are talking about interesting, you don't have to sort of sit here. You can just rewatch it later, right? So that's the important part. There is another one, Matt in New York. Hey, New York. Any thoughts on audio production learning journeys and where you think new users will find their path in this space? Do you think more UI UX learning integration into the products themselves, like the standalone content, or something different? That's a long and difficult question. Thoughts on audio production learning journey? Okay. So
This is a great question. I think it's a little bit of both. Right. I think embedding integration into the actual UI UX of, recording software, we're already starting to see that happen more. And that's going to be important. I think, in terms of, standalone content, we're also seeing more of this, right? There's so much, audio production education that happens now on Twitch and on YouTube. And, there's just so much out there. There's companies like Pure Mix and Mix with the Masters, and companies that make really high quality content with some of the best engineers in the world to sort of teach you how to do this task or that task. And I also think, that maybe the something different here is all like, AI, and where is that going, right? And I think a lot of the attention and the hype within, music production around AI has really been on with generative AI, with, obviously not just within music, but just in general. And I think, it still remains to be seen, what how we will leverage those technologies to make music production, and some of the more time consuming and tedious tasks of music production easier for people. And that's something personally that I'm really excited about. So I really do think it's all of the above. And I think, if you fast forward, 5-10 years in the future from now, I think, I think AI driven workflows for mixing and signal chain generation and genre specific sort of templates and sonics. I think will start to become more embedded in recording software, and that may alleviate the need for things like in-app kind of learning or instruction. That remains to be seen, but I do think that it's going to be some combination of everything that you've laid out here, Matt. That's a really good question.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, I think there was also, it was Simon Cross from CPO from Native Instruments who mentioned that actually this is also like a peak of their part of their, like a part of their strategy, actually to have this sort of built-in education or like a guidance how we can actually take more of existing products, right? Because very often, the products they people just like use the tiny part of the the functionalities that are there. I think a lot of companies struggle with this. How can we sort of like get more to our existing suite that you have, right? And,
yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, and I also like remember. I think on the other hand, that was Matt Collins, head of product from Krotos Audio, the Krotos Studio post production. He also mentioned interesting point that to him the issue with this complexity of audio products is they originated in this sort of engineering domain, right? Engineers creating consoles, etc., like recording, tape machines and stuff like this. So a lot of those products, I mean, even nowadays who are digitized, they're still sort of like a bit like a legacy products, and I think a lot of startups have much sort of easier path, right? Because for bigger companies, it's actually very often rewriting the entire product, right? If you want to sort of update something, because there is so much, like a legacy stuff underneath, you actually, it's afraid to touch anything, not to break stuff, right? So here is, I think, another sort of point that will actually, I'm just super curious what sort of startups bring, right? Who are dynamic and agile, and and they will actually maybe, I mean, obviously AI, it's one of them, but it doesn't necessarily mean only AI, right? I mean, some other interesting interfaces, right? And interaction of humans with the computer. That's like a gesture, for example, right? How to use gestures, to or even like a language control, stuff like this, right? I mean, voice control over of their products. That's
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. I think one thing that I yeah, this is I think it's just a really interesting discussion. When it comes to instruments, particularly things like guitars, for example, you know people even young players today still want largely what people have wanted for decades, right? They want Stratocasters and they want Telecasters and Les Pauls, and and there's this aversion to change, right? That is just sort of very closely held, I think, within the guitar space, for example. I think it's a really interesting question when it comes to recording and music production, how much the next generation of artists will sort of care about that legacy type interaction and sort of the heritage of analog hardware and how mixing consoles work, and sort of these well established sort of iconic pieces of gear and workflows that people have used for decades now. And how much people will cling on to that. I think that's definitely something that we think a lot about at Universal Audio. Our heritage as a brand is really around emulating classic analog gear, and I think it's very much an open question that we think about all the time. As more and more young people come into to recording, do they know what Neve is? Do they know what API is? Do they know how a mixing console works? Do they have the same sort of reverence for those things as they do for, say, guitars, for example? And sort of like classic guitars or classic amps and effects and things like that. So it's definitely a thought-provoking question and thing to think about. Yeah.
You know what? I have probably it's a controversial thing to say, but I mean, personally, I also like that we are a bit conservative because, especially, like a non-music or non-audio tech tech bros, sort of, they push sometimes changes for the sake of changes, right? I mean, yeah, we do some things because we can, right? And I mean, especially everybody who is like a bit active in the music space, not just doing technology, understand that, sometimes it's great to play just normal piano, right? I don't need to have thousands of screens. I actually have this piano because it has no screens. It's just like you turn it on and play, right? And the same, that's why people love like the guitars and pianos, etc. I mean, so it's actually very hard sometimes for me to sort of like a balance, because on one hand you are a tech guy, building products, or like take part in sort of like a building products, and you want to push the technology forward, or like innovation. On the other hand, I say, hey, but what's wrong with the piano, right? I mean, it's been here for hundreds of years. I don't know actually when it was actually really invented. I'm sure it's an interesting question, right? When the grand piano was invented, right? So like why changing things that are sort of so amazing, right? I mean, or why replacing them? I mean, usually I believe that there is a lot of people who do this because they are actually not playing instruments, right? And they are not musicians. And like I can even see some comments from when there are those previous episodes. Somebody say, "Hey, like a tech bro," So it's like some kind of insult, right? That this person is not from the industry, right? So how can he sort of like tell us what to do, right? Yeah, so it's like another sort of like a big sort of like a sort of balancing act I have in my mind, right? How to sort of like do innovation, but actually, well, there are things that are good just because they are just like as they are, right? I mean, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, guys, are there any other questions? So we have maybe time for one, two more. I want to also say it's a very important point because we are talking today more so about the musical instruments and professional audio. But remember that our academy is not just about the instruments we are talking about. So like a live systems and like all this like a B2B audio products, right? Remember that Simon is actually listening today. I'm not sure if he's still here. Who is the like a co-founder of Audio Kinetic. So we have also like a software for game audio and how to sort of distribute music and sound effects in in the movies, in the games. So we really would like to build a platform which actually brings all the people that love music, audio, and they're nerds like us together, and not just musical instruments, right? So by any means, it's not just if you don't play guitar or a piano, you are not welcome here, right? So that's the opposite, actually. Yeah. So that's just important comment I would like to make. And while we're just waiting for the questions, for the last questions, remember scan the code if you don't like clicking links, and stay tuned because after Easter there will be another episode. So any more questions? Okay, I think we just run out. Yeah, I think there's one interesting comment. I just somewhere. I didn't want to like interrupt. That's yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Hi Alex. Yep. So that's a like a maybe nice closing remark. All right. Yeah, guys, so thank you so much. I mean, for listening, Rodrigo. Thank you so much, for sharing your experience. Once again, I think we need to turn them into like a 2-3 hours, long episodes, because after 40 minutes, I'm just like, okay, we just scratched the surface. Now I have like 20 or 30 questions, and I think people probably may feel the same. But once again, we're just like starting out. There will be more for sure. Yeah, but I'm super happy that first of all that you joined today, and then also that you joined the like a programming board, because this content this discussion is also happening offline, guys, and we're just like thinking what else what people to bring and what content to bring, so you actually have like a cool content, cool stuff. And remember to fill the survey, because I just need to paste it here, just 1 second, because really practice what you preach, right? So we need data. We need sort of like your feedback. Of course, we are just also biased, heavily. I can do what I like, but I would like those webinars, to be, or like a podcast actually, to be more what you like, right? So please share, sort of, so your tip, your insights with us. Okay. Okay, so what can we say? Thank you again. It was really nice talking to you, and have a good day. It's noon, right? It's noon right now.
Yeah, it's around noon over here. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah,
Have a
thanks.
good.
Yeah, thanks again for having me on. And I continue to learn from this content as well, and from some of the other guests that you've had. So I'm always grateful for the opportunity to share, but also to learn from you and your guests. And I'm happy to come back anytime. So and thanks to everybody
Be
who.
careful. Be careful. Be careful. It's recorded, so I can bring it, and say, hey, you said that, Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks to everybody for the questions and for the engagement.
All right. So have a good one.
Cheers. Take care, everybody.